The Galactic Empire had watched Earth for some time before making contact. From a vantage point of their observation satellites, they saw a young, divided species struggling with internal conflicts, environmental instability, and an uneven distribution of technology. Compared to the vast interstellar civilizations that span the known galaxy, Earth was, in the Empire's opinion, woefully unprepared for the dangers that lurked beyond their fragile atmosphere. To the Empire, this was not an opportunity for alliance or partnership. It was an opportunity for stewardship, an offer of protection under Imperial guidance, whether the humans understood they needed it or not. When the Imperial fleet arrived in Earth's orbit, they did not bring weapons, raids, and aggression. They brought ambassadors, envoys, and ships adorned with banners of peace. The Empire was confident in their role as benefactors. They had extended their protection to dozens of lesser civilizations before, absorbing them into the Empire's fold with minimal resistance. It was a familiar process. The envoys presented their offer to Earth's leadership with carefully chosen words, explaining the threats that Earth could not possibly face alone. Marauding fleets, planetary harvesters, cosmic plagues. They warned of distant warlords who would devour entire systems without pause. The Empire framed themselves as Earth's only shield against such dangers. The humans listened with polite attention, but offered little response beyond the expected diplomatic formalities. There was no overt excitement, no desperation to accept the protection offered. In fact, Earth's representatives seemed more curious about the logistics of the Empire's offer than about the threats themselves. The Empire's diplomats mistook this as a sign of ignorance, perhaps a symptom of an underdeveloped species that did not fully comprehend the scale of the galaxy's dangers. The Empire's delegation returned to their fleet with an air of superiority. They believed the humans would soon request further assistance once they grasped the seriousness of their situation. The diplomatic team reported that Earth would likely accept Imperial oversight within the next planetary cycle. As a gesture of impending integration, the Empire began dispatching survey teams, lightly armed security detachments, and infrastructure experts to prepare Earth cities for benefits of Imperial governance. Unexpectedly, those teams met resistance. Not open hostility, but quiet, bureaucratic obstruction. Permits were delayed. Landing zones were denied. Local officials offered calm, repetitive refusals, citing complex internal protocols. The Empire's diplomats attempted to bypass these trivialities, only to find that their requests vanished into Earth's labyrinthine administrative systems. It was as though the humans were refusing without actually saying the word. Frustration grew among the Imperial envoys. Used to swift compliance, they pushed harder, escalating their demands, attempting minor shows of force to remind the humans of their place. Imperial patrol ships performed low-atmosphere flyovers, disrupting air traffic and communications as a subtle warning. But even then, the human response remained eerily measured. Earth's military assets neither withdrew nor mobilized. Instead, they made quiet adjustments to their electronic warfare arrays, gradually jamming Imperial signals and forcing Imperial patrols to retreat to higher orbit under the guise of safety protocols. The Empire's commanders, still convinced of their superiority, authorized a limited blockade to encourage human cooperation. Key orbital lanes were restricted. Imperial ships intercepted non-compliant traffic and detained vessels for inspection. This time, the humans responded by rerouting their satellites and weaponizing their civilian infrastructure in ways the Empire had not anticipated. Entire swathes of Imperial navigation networks were quietly corrupted. Supply chains broke down as planetary data streams became unreliable. The Empire's enforcement ships found their automated systems hijacked mid-operation, their sensors blinded by signals they could neither decrypt nor block. The humans had not fired a single shot, yet the Empire's logistical framework began to falter. The diplomats, now alarmed, returned to Earth's leadership demanding explanation, only to receive calm, almost indifferent responses. Earth's representatives expressed regret over the Empire's difficulties, but denied any responsibility. They insisted they were committed to peaceful relations, while quietly continuing their campaign of systemic disruption. The Imperial Admiralty interpreted the humans' calm as a weakness, a bluff waiting to be broken. They issued an ultimatum: accept Imperial protection formally or face escalation. Earth's response was immediate, But it was not what the Empire expected. There was no frantic negotiation, no scramble to avoid conflict. The reply was cold and simple. We accept the consequences. The Empire took that as consent to begin what they called pacification procedures. They prepared a fleet for a swift demonstration of power, assuming that minimal force would be required to bring the humans to heel. They anticipated the standard cycle of surrender. Initial panic, token resistance, followed by capitulation and integration. They did not anticipate what came next. The first Imperial fleet to enter Earth's atmosphere encountered resistance that should not have existed. Human aircraft, initially dismissed as primitive, executed coordinated maneuvers that disabled the Empire's atmospheric fighters with an alarming success rate. Anti-ship weapons, launched for what the Empire had cataloged as civilian platforms, struck with pinpoint accuracy. The Empire's tactical analysis systems began to fail in real time as they encountered data patterns they had no framework to process. The humans were operating outside of every known combat doctrine. Imperial forces attempted to deploy ground units to seize key human command centers. Those landing zones became death traps. Human defenders used terrain, weather manipulation, and kinetic strikes from unconventional sources to decimate Imperial infantry. It was not simply that the humans fought back. It was the way they fought. They adapted within minutes, exploited weaknesses before the Empire even realized those weaknesses existed, and deployed weapons that appeared to have been designed specifically to counter Imperial shielding and armor. The Empire's communications networks, supposedly secured by layers of quantum encryption, began to collapse under the weight of human cyber offensives. Orders sent from Fleet Command were intercepted, altered, or delayed by precisely timed attacks on communication relays. Imperial ships found themselves operating in silos, cut off from Central Command, while human forces struck with ruthless precision. The Empire's response to its initial defeats was swift and brutal. Reinforcements were mobilized from neighboring sectors, and a hardened fleet under the command of seasoned warlords was dispatched with orders to crush Earth's defenses and establish orbital dominance within a single cycle. The Empire believed they had underestimated the humans, that the problem was tactical, not existential. They were wrong. The new Imperial fleet entered the system fully expecting to sweep aside the human resistance. They carried heavier weapons, advanced shielding, and the full support of the Empire's strategic command. Yet the moment they initiated their approach, the humans began manipulating the battle space in ways the Empire still could not predict. Orbital debris fields, seemingly random and disorganized, were weaponized into kinetic traps. Imperial ships collided with undetectable minefields that had been disguised as harmless satellite clusters. Human jamming signals fragmented fleet formations and sowed confusion at critical moments, preventing Imperial squadrons from coordinating effectively. When the Empire attempted ground invasions, they found the landing zones rigged with non-traditional defenses. Human units deployed portable railguns, high-energy directed weapons, and automated drone swarms that overwhelmed the Empire's infantry within minutes. The humans had calculated the Empire's landing vectors and adjusted planetary defenses to maximize attrition. They were not reacting, they were waiting. The Empire's commanders, alarmed by the rapid deterioration of their offensive, ordered more aggressive orbital bombardments. Human defenses responded by disabling Imperial targeting systems through cybernetic interference, forcing Imperial ships to fire blind or risk friendly fire. Human strike craft, operating in configurations the Empire had never encountered, exploited these weaknesses with lethal precision. Their attack patterns did not follow predictable algorithms. They adapted mid-engagement bypass shields and disabled key systems with single, devastating shots. Imperial logistics faltered. Supply routes were systematically disrupted by human cyber offensives. Convoys disappeared, communications blacked out, and staging points collapsed under sabotage the Empire could not trace. Human operatives appeared to move freely behind Imperial lines, coordinating strikes that unraveled entire campaigns. The humans did not require numerical superiority. They leveraged every weakness in the Empire's vast but rigid infrastructure. The Empire escalated, deploying their elite shock troops and deploying experimental weaponry to break human resistance. Yet every new tactic was met with human countermeasures that should have taken years to develop. The The humans adapted within days, sometimes hours, nullifying Imperial technological advantages through sheer ingenuity. When the Empire introduced energy dispersal armor to defend against railgun projectiles, human forces responded with multi-stage munitions that pierced it effortlessly. When the Empire attempted wide-area denial fields to limit human movement, human units exploited the Empire's reliance on those fields to funnel enemy forces into pre-planned kill zones. Human warfare did not adhere to the limitations that governed Imperial strategy. With the Empire focused on calculated dominance, humans embraced chaos. They turned civilian infrastructure into weapons platforms. They reconfigured their orbital habitats into mobile artillery. They hijacked Imperial supply drones, repurposing them into self-guided missiles. They weaponized the electromagnetic spectrum, saturating Imperial sensors with false readings, phantom fleets, and fabricated battle groups. Psychological warfare became a constant undercurrent. The Empire's soldiers began receiving false communications, doctored orders, and distress signals that lured them into ambushes. Human broadcasts interrupted Imperial channels with precision strikes against morale, eroding the confidence of even the most hardened units. Stories of human unpredictability and ruthless efficiency spread through Imperial ranks, creating hesitation, fear, and breakdowns in cohesion. Entire Imperial battalions surrendered without direct engagement, convinced they were surrounded by superior human forces that were, in fact, decoys. Some Imperial officers abandoned their posts after intercepting fabricated human communications that suggested imminent strikes that never came. The Empire's chain of command fractured under pressure, as officers questioned the authenticity of every transmission and suspected internal sabotage where none existed. The Empire attempted to isolate Earth by cutting it off from potential allies and interstellar trade. Human responses made that strategy obsolete. They bypassed traditional routes, deployed independent fleets that operated autonomously, and leveraged captured Imperial technology to build faster, more efficient transit networks. Human vessels began appearing deep within Imperial space, conducting raids with surgical precision, and disappearing before Imperial forces could mount a response. Captured Imperial technology did not remain Imperial for long. Humans reverse-engineered and modified it beyond recognition. They improved power efficiency, bypassed security protocols, and adapted alien systems to their own tactical philosophy. In engagements where Imperial ships once held supremacy, human-modified vessels now outmaneuvered and outgunned their Imperial counterparts. Imperial command shifted strategies, attempting to flood the system with overwhelming force, but their numerical superiority became a liability. Human commanders used the Empire's reliance on large-scale coordination to sow catastrophic misdirection. They manipulated Imperial movement, drew them into overlapping fields of fire, and collapsed their formations with well-timed flanking maneuvers. Entire fleets were obliterated by human units operating at a fraction of their size. The Galactic Council, monitoring the escalation with increasing alarm, convened emergency sessions to address the crisis. Reports submitted by Imperial observers painted a grim picture. Human forces displayed a level of adaptability and resilience that no known species had ever encountered. The Council advised immediate negotiation. Imperial leadership ignored these recommendations, determined to restore dominance through sheer force. The Empire's next offensive was met with human forces that no longer defended Earth. They attacked beyond their system. Human fleets penetrated Imperial territories, striking fuel depots, shipyards, and command centers previously thought untouchable. They moved without warning, engaged with overwhelming speed, and withdrew before the Empire could respond effectively. Human tactics now aimed at systemic paralysis, targeting the infrastructure that kept the Empire's fleets operational. Imperial commanders faced an enemy that understood them too well. Human strategists anticipated Imperial responses and countered them with unnerving precision. Imperial war games, once effective at predicting opponent behavior, failed catastrophically against human operations. Human units deliberately presented false vulnerabilities, baiting Imperial forces into offensives that disintegrated under crossfire from hidden positions. The collapse of the Empire's military structure spread faster than its leaders could comprehend. Entire fleets disbanded, Officers abandoned their posts, and the communications web that once bound imperial territories into a cohesive force unraveled into static. The humans pressed forward, dismantling what little resistance remained, methodically reducing imperial assets with the same cold efficiency they had maintained from the beginning. The humans did not slow, did not open channels for negotiation, and did not pause to secure captured territories. Their silence was suffocating. The Empire, so accustomed to war waged through political theater, was left staggering in confusion as the humans advanced without demands, without proclamations, without hesitation. Panic spread through the surviving sectors as rumors solidified into undeniable fact. Human fleets, small but impossibly fast, began to appear in core systems, bypassing defensive perimeters as if they were non-existent. Imperial commanders attempted to regroup, but each effort was crushed before it could fully form. Attempt to centralize leadership failed as targeted human strikes decapitated chains of command, leaving entire formations leaderless. The humans exploited the vacuum with surgical raids that severed fuel supplies, crippled shipyards, and left the Empire's infrastructure disintegrating. Imperial warlords, once defiant, now abandoned their territories and fled into the far reaches of the galaxy. Imperial governors declared neutrality or pledged allegiance to human forces that never acknowledged their gestures. The humans did not occupy the worlds they stripped of imperial control. They left them adrift, their population scrambling to fill the void of power left in the wake of the human onslaught. The absence of human governance was not mercy. It was a calculated demonstration that they had no interest in ruling what they could dismantle. The Galactic Council, increasingly desperate, sent emissaries to Earth, offering sweeping concessions and formal recognition of human sovereignty over contested space. No human representative answered. Messages were left unanswered, channels went silent, and fleets continued their operations without deviation. The Council's offers became more generous with each passing cycle, evolving into pleas, but the humans never acknowledged them. The war had transcended diplomacy. The Empire's destruction had become inevitable, and humanity had no intention of prolonging the dialogue. Isolated imperial worlds attempted to surrender individually, broadcasting signals of compliance and submission to approaching human fleets. The humans ignored the broadcasts and continued their systematic neutralization of military assets before moving on, leaving surrendered territories to govern themselves. They dismantled the Empire's ability to threaten and simply left. There was no annexation, no enforced governance, and no effort to claim resources. The humans had only come to end the Empire's reach, and when that was complete, they did not linger. Internal fractures within the remnants of the Empire deepened as surviving officials turned on each other, desperate to salvage what remained of their power. Some attempted to flee to the outer sectors. Others tried to consolidate what little military strength they had into fortified enclaves, but none succeeded. Human precision strikes disarmed each effort in succession, moving with a speed and accuracy that imperial strategists could neither predict nor counter. The humans always seemed to know where the next rallying point would emerge, striking before it could gain momentum. The surviving imperial fleets attempted to retreat to their most secure territories, but the humans were already there, dismantling forward operating bases, destroying supply hubs, and erasing defensive stations. The Empire's once vaunted territories became corridors of vulnerability, open paths for human forces to pass through without challenge. Entire sectors fell without a single major engagement as imperial forces abandoned their positions in terror of the advancing human fleets. Civilian populations fled in waves, overwhelming neutral systems with refugees. Former imperial allies severed diplomatic ties, fearful that any association with the Empire would draw human attention. Entire planetary governments declared their neutrality in desperate attempts to avoid human scrutiny, unaware that the humans had never been interested in conquest. Humanity's silence spoke louder than any proclamation. They did not need to claim the worlds they had liberated. The absence of imperial flags was enough. The Empire's political heart fractured as the Imperial High Council dissolved under the weight of its irrelevance. Imperial aristocrats, who once ruled through intimidation and force, found themselves hunted by their own people. In the absence of imperial order, rebellions flourished, and species long suppressed by the Empire seized the opportunity to establish their independence. The humans had dismantled the Empire's ability to project power, and the galaxy responded by tearing the remnants apart. Survivors who had witnessed the human advance spoke of their cold precision, their refusal to negotiate, their terrifying focus. They did not gloat. They did not broadcast victories. They left no trace but the absence of Imperial presence. The galaxy struggled to reconcile the humans' power with their refusal to exploit it. They had destroyed the Empire not to replace it, but to ensure it would never rise again. Imperial commanders, stripped of fleets and authority, sought refuge in neutral territories, but their names carried the weight of failure. Some were assassinated by their former subordinates. Others were handed over to human patrols by desperate factions hoping to buy goodwill. The humans took them without ceremony, without trials, without statements. They simply disappeared, removed from the board with the same efficiency as Imperial outposts. The Galactic Council's final attempt to broker peace came in the form of a direct envoy dispatched to Earth with offers of unprecedented concessions, but the envoy never reached the human leadership. The humans responded with a single transmission, broadcast across Council frequencies, received by every species that had observed the war. The message was brief, unembellished, and absolute. We do not require protection. We are not a threat unless you insist on making us one. The words reverberated across every council chamber, every diplomatic hub, every neutral system. They were not a warning. They were a fact, a declaration of human self-determination that no power in the galaxy could challenge. The silence that followed the transmission was more profound than any further statement could have been. The humans resumed their operations, not to seize, but to finish. Human forces struck the last remaining Imperial strongholds, disassembling weapons platforms and erasing data caches that could have been used to rebuild. They left no opening for resurgence, no pathway for recovery. When the final Imperial defense stations fell, the humans did not celebrate. They simply left, their fleets vanishing from occupied space, their presence reduced to the echo of what they had dismantled.